All right, welcome to the second episode of Find Your Free, the podcast. I want to start this podcast, this episode, first by saying thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who checked out the first episode, which I just launched this past Tuesday, December 8th. So that will be a significant day in the history of my business. But yeah, thank you so much to everyone who checked it out, who shared a good word, who passed it along, who gave me some feedback. This is truly a vision manifested, and I'm always so grateful for everybody who just plays a part, in this vision coming to life. So thank you so much. So here we are again, episode 2, and I also must start off by apologizing for my voice. My childhood best friend was just in town this week. Shout out to you, Tawana. Tawana and I have been friends since the second grade. So that is like 6, 7 years old. And we are now both 43. So friendship for a long, long time. She's not even my friend. She's my sister, So shout out to Tawana. But every time she comes down, it is like endless laughing, endless talking, endless everything. And I always end up with a super hoarse voice. So my voice is now in recovery mode. So there may be some throat clearing. There may be some scratchiness. So I just want to kind of put that out there and ask you to bear with me for this episode. I will say some of the feedback that I got from the first episode was the love of my voice and appreciation for my voice. And I'm very grateful for that. It's interesting because I am the youngest of 4 brothers and actually 5, 1 in spirit, but 4 brothers who still walk the earth with us. And so I'm the only girl. And, just always felt like my voice was annoying, to be honest. And so when I hear like, oh man, you have this voice, it's actually super surprising to me because I always kind of hear it, through the lens of being like a baby sister or through the ears of being a baby sister. So shout out to everybody who likes my voice. But here we are. Yes. Let's get moving into what I have lined up to talk about today. So on today's episode, I'm also going to put out there, it's probably going to get a little emotional. I'm telling myself I may cry, I may surprise myself and not drop a tear. But I'm going to get, into some of the personal stuff today. And like I said in the last podcast, that is pretty much part of the work and the goal. And, part of what this space is about being vulnerable, sharing some of my stuff. Certainly if my stuff involves like other parties, I would certainly, talk to those other parties, make sure they were comfortable with me sharing my stuff. But that's just how I am. That's how I move. That's the heart of my business, which is just being vulnerable, speaking from the heart and, just kind of giving people an insight into my world. Not that my world is significant or anything like that significant to me. But in terms of, as I said in the last podcast, in terms of just not feeling alone, so I'm one of those people who's definitely willing to kind of put this stuff out there so that other people who might be dealing with the same thing feel less alone or know that there's a resource out there. So that's why, and why I move how I move and how I move. Okay, so let's get into it. So with the last episode, I ended with a passage, as I'll be ending every podcast episode, with a passage of a reading, something to reflect on, something to sort of leave the podcast with. And the last episode, I shared a passage called Trust Each Moment. Excuse me, there's my first throat clearing. And I've really been reflecting on that as I've been thinking about, okay, what's the second episode going to be about? And just that passage, those words, trust each moment, just really sat with me. And it got me to thinking about the fertility journey that I'm on. So I am blessed to be a mother to a beautiful, beautiful 13-year-old son. Shout out to you, Voss, my baby, my heart, my everything. Voss has been my only child. And I've always been a woman who has known that, she's wanted kids. I've known that ever since, ever since. Being one of four, I always said I wanted four kids. But, as I got older and after I had my first son, I was like, okay, I can definitely drop down to like two or three. But I've always wanted, multiple kids. I've always had this vision of just this family and all these kids and, all that good stuff. And so I have my beautiful, beautiful son. And he was born as a result of the first marriage that I was in. I was in a very brief marriage from 2006 to about 2009. So long enough to get married, make the kid, have the kid, and all that good stuff. But it was a very short-lived marriage. And we'll kind of get into that stuff in a different episode. But I became a single mom when my son was just a year and a half, going on 2 years old. And when he was first born, I kind of thought, all right, it'll be just him for the first 5 years because he's my first one. So I want to give myself like 5 years of space to figure it out and, give him just all of me. And then I figured, in 5 years, I'd be ready to try again. I was 30 at the time. So I felt like, yeah, I got time. I got time to do this. And so I didn't expect, divorce to come shortly after he was born. And I didn't expect that it would take, another 10, 11 years before I would be in a relationship where, having another child would be on the table. So, so I'm a mom to a beautiful son, and I'm so, so grateful for that. But we have been working on conceiving a child together, my partner and I. And so this is one of those conversations where, I had to make sure my partner was cool with me talking about this because this is an us thing, not just a me thing. But I do want to share how it has impacted me, certainly as a woman, and for other women who may be, on a similar journey, on this journey with me. So we have been trying to conceive for 2 years, and, it hasn't happened. And, at first you kind of like, okay, we just got to kind of, get the mark, get the target, because as I've learned getting older, it's not as easy to get pregnant as one would think, when we are young girls and teenagers and young ladies, because there's so much emphasis on us not getting pregnant and, focusing our lives, and rightfully so, not knocking that. But it's just that there's so much around not getting pregnant that it almost makes you feel like you could just slip up and sneeze and, just get pregnant at any moment, so that when you get to the place where you're actually trying to get pregnant and you realize like it's not as easy. It's a little bit of a mind fuck, to be honest. And so, we've been trying to conceive, and, for the first couple months or whatever, it's just kind of like, all right, the whole timing and this and that. And, and then you start to realize like, okay, this is not happening. And, again, I'm 43, so 2 years ago, 41. So, I'm trying this process at 41. And, you start to look up on Google, do the search, and all that good stuff. And, you come to find out over 35, if you are not conceiving within 6 months, you should, start getting stuff checked out. So my response to that was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to wait another 6 months, because I am definitely Scorpio woman that I am, and I mentioned that in the last podcast as well. I'm a very, I can be super in the clouds. Like, so I'm grounded in a lot of ways, I'm super serious Scorpio in a lot of ways, but, if you know Ayurveda, I got a lot of Vata going on. I have Leo rising. So I have a lot of different energy that is creative and, again, has me like in the clouds a lot. So I'm very kind of like magical and unicorns and, all that good stuff. And so just being in that space of wanting to truly, manifest this baby, this child, like, on our own and through our love, it's like, no, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to kind of trust the process, right? Looking back, though, I realized what I was doing was I was avoiding, having to really look at the situation. And I was avoiding, wanting to go to the doctor, wanting to get things checked out because, you never want to go and find out like, oh, yeah, something's wrong. And, when you're in the position of having a child already and you're kind of working to have another one and it's not turning out super easy, people will say to you like, "Oh, you had a kid already. You had a kid already. Like it'll be fine." And I get it. You know what I mean? The body, I trust my body. I trust my body's wisdom. I trust that when I do get pregnant, my body will innately know what's going on. But at the same time, it's been 13 years since I've had a kid, right? So it might not be like, yeah, just like riding a bike or whatever. It might not be like everything is running on all cylinders right away. So, with all of that, I just was like, all right, I'm just gonna, take my time, not get things checked out, and just keep rolling. And so we get like a year and a half into, this process, and we get to the beginning of this year. And I finally decide, okay, I should get some things checked out just to be sure. And so, of course, I make this decision right as, COVID happened, pandemic, quarantine, all of this. And so trying to be, being on the fertility, the sort of what they call the TTC, trying to conceive in the fertility world, being on this journey, when it becomes, a journey, it's challenging enough. And there's all kinds of stuff that comes with it, right? But being on this journey in the time of COVID and pandemics and the masks and all of that, it's a whole different level because it's a process that for many women, at least for this woman, it requires some hand holding, some personal touch. And it's very, as with everything, it's very the 6 feet apart. You can only be in, for your appointment. Your partner can't come with you. It's just all these just different rules and regulations that makes it a sort of like this isolated, almost cold kind of process. A lot of stuff done by telehealth and, all of that. And I understand why, but it just impacts the overall journey, that much more. So I go to, finally decide to go get things checked out. And, thankfully, everything is fine. Like all things seem to be as they need to be. It's just simply the fact that I'm 43, trying to have this kid, trying to have another baby. And, like I'm sitting here trying to, like I'm toying with myself, like, how far are you really going to go? But I guess I'm just going to go. So, you have IVF, which is the in vitro fertilization. And then you have some other procedures. You can take some hormone boosters. You can do the process of IUI, which is intrauterine insemination, going off the top of my head. So apologies right now if this is TMI. Mommy, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but this is the truth. But so there's these different procedures that you can do. And so it was recommended to us that we go straight to IVF because of the whole age. And this is what's another mind fuck, right? So 43, and I'm okay with the aging process, right? Like I definitely have my stuff around death and losing people and the unknown. Like I have my stuff with that I personally have to work through. But overall, like I'm not freaking out about aging. I'm trying to move, with this process as gracefully as possible. Shout out to yoga because yoga comes into my life in a very serious way, around 36 or 35, 36. And so practicing yoga just as a way of life has given me so much awareness of my body, so much mindfulness with my body. So I feel so much better in my body than I ever had before. Certainly in my 20s, in my college days, I might have had a little bit of a different figure, things like that. I do feel some things in my knees. I will admit that. You see the little lines here and there, but overall, like, I feel better. You know what I mean? I might have had a different look. I might have had a more slender figure, whatever the case may be in college. But, I didn't have like an awareness. I was in college. I was having a good time. It's a very different awareness that I have within myself and within my body at this age. And so I just feel strong, and so when anybody who's been, on the journey of A, trying to have a baby, and then B, trying to have a baby over 40, when you're in that over 40 category, it's the whole geriatric pregnancy thing, which is just like, it's like what? But, hearing that and, all of the science and all of the statistics that are there. And I don't, I move in a very Eastern medicine, holistic kind of way, but I don't knock Western medicine. I think that there's a place for both. In an Ayurveda course I took, there was a quote, or maybe it was on Instagram, somewhere along the way though, I heard this quote that said, Western medicine is good for diagnosis, Eastern medicine is good for treatment. And that's kind of how I personally move. But, if you got to use the Western medicine, use the Western medicine. And so anyway, totally, totally getting off track. What I'm saying though is that I understand and I see and I agree. I don't deny, what science says, but then there's just how I feel in my body, which is like, I don't feel geriatric. Like I don't feel, you know what I mean? I don't feel old. And, I even went to one gynecologist, a new gynecologist. And, when I told her like why I was there and to get things checked out, even she was just kind of like, why would you want to do this? Like at your age, it's kind of like setting yourself up to fail a little bit. And I understand she had to give me all the perspectives and the real. I understand I had to have the reality of things, but it was just like, man, because I believe I can do this and I believe it can be done. And I know that, there's only so much in the physical plane that I can do. Ultimately, this is something, at least for what I believe, it's on God, it's on the universe. It's, you know what I mean? It's in the hands of spirit, which is why I trust each moment. Right. So, anyway, getting back to the procedure. So we're told, okay, IVF because of age, all this stuff. So we're thinking, okay, we'll do IVF. And this is where, the pandemic stuff comes into play, because instead of being able to go and sit face to face with the doctor and ask the questions and, hold my partner's hand and just have that support, it's like, you just got to watch a bunch of videos like at home on your time by a certain day, all of this. And I'm going through probably about 2.5 hours worth of odd and end videos with quizzes at the end, all that. It's very much like if you have a full-time job or a job, if you're just in corporate America and you have to do those HR trainings where you watch videos and answer questions at the end. It was very much like that. And so it just like taking all of that in through these videos, like it felt super overwhelming. It felt so overwhelming. And I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't knock the process. I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this. So even though it was kind of being encouraged for us as sort of the surefire response, working with the fertility place that I'm working with, they said, no, you don't have to do that. You can do the IUI. You can do the kind of like the first step and see how that goes. So that's what we, decided to do. That's what we've been trying. And we haven't, been successful. And, they tell you it can take way more than just one try. It's usually might not happen on the first shot. Like you kind of go in and they're like, don't expect it to happen on the first shot. So there's been more than, one time and it hasn't happened. And it's just a process that is, every month you get your cycle and it's just a process that can just feel sort of continuously discouraging. But then the type of woman I am, person that I am, I always used to say like my middle name is like persistence. Like I'm going to keep trying to fight the good fight. Like I'll feel like I want to give up. I'll feel like I want to just step back. I'll feel like, it's just not working, but I ultimately will keep fighting the good fight. And so, we're, going through the process. And again, like I said, it hasn't happened. And so we're getting ready for the next cycle. And, again, anybody who's done this knows like, it's just this process of like, you got to go in on this day. You got to go in at this time. You got to make sure you're doing it this. They got to check it at this. And so it's very, very, very time specific, cycle specific, all of this stuff. And so, when it didn't happen with the previous round, I felt what I felt, had my moment. Then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go, with the next round. And so we go get to the initial monitoring or whatever. And then they call and they're like, yeah, your body's kind of having like a response to the hormones. Totally happens. You know what I mean? But we're just going to have you kind of chill out for this month as far as procedure goes and wait and come in next month. And so it's like, all right, it's one thing, to be on the journey, right? it's another thing to have to fight the fight, so to speak. And then it's another thing to be told, like, no, you can't. You got to sit down. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we can't try naturally and all that good stuff. But, I've kind of have gotten my mind wrapped around the fact that this thing is going to be a procedure. And so it's like, now we can't do the procedure. And, I was just crushed. And it's like, what can you do? I know enough to know at this point that when the universe really kind of just sits you down, you got to listen. You can fight, you can resist, you can try to, find some type of fluidity to keep things going. But it's just like, okay, I'm going to sit down. And so that's where trusting each moment comes into play, right? That's where I started reflecting on this passage, because I'm in this space with the fertility journey, and it's coinciding with me just starting this podcast. And it just kind of seemed like a good place to go. It just seemed like, yeah, I want to talk about this. I thought about it and I thought about it and I thought about it because, I know it means putting a very personal part of my life out there. I know it means, people asking questions, maybe offering unsolicited advice. I know it means, again, my mom, if she's listening, thinking like, why is my daughter like sharing all of her business? And, anybody who really has been on the journey with me of Rachel Voss Yoga, shout out to everybody who's in the Rachel Voss Yoga community, who's donated to the Rachel Voss Yoga community. I see you. I love you. Thank you. But anybody who's been on the journey with me knows, again, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, like I've always kind of put my heart on my sleeve. But I do pick and choose things that are not for public consumption. And outside of outwardly expressing and saying like, yeah, I want to have a baby. We're trying to have a baby. I haven't really kind of gotten into the behind the scenes of what the journey has really looked like and felt like. And so when we were told like, yeah, just rest this month, kind of just work things, try to, work on it naturally or whatever. Like I said, I was discouraged and, I just started thinking about trusting each moment. And that is the challenge for us humans, right? Trusting, like really putting trust in each moment sometimes and trusting that we are exactly where we're meant to be, no matter how uncomfortable a situation is or feels or might feel, and the more uncomfortable it is, the harder it is to trust, like, I'm here for a reason or I'm where I'm meant to be. It can be really hard to anchor into that. It's certainly much easier when, everything is, moving the way you want it to move, when things are happening the way you want them to happen. It's so much easier to say, yeah, I'm right where I'm meant to be. But when it's uncomfortable, it's like, why am I here? Why am I here? And even though you've been through other uncomfortable situations before, when you're in the moment, it can be hard to trust the moment. So this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm working on. It makes me think again of the physical yoga practice. When we get into postures that are uncomfortable, and I'll take my students through some challenging flows and postures sometimes that get me very dirty looks at the end of class. But the idea I always tell them is not to kick their ass. It's not to make them feel worn out. It's not to have them feel pain like the next day. That's not it. You know what I mean? The goal is to get you in those uncomfortable places, certain postures, and it can be different postures for different people. For some folks, it's a simple, maybe stretching. For other folks, it can be like an arm balancing things. Like everybody has their thing that challenges them on the yoga mat. But when you get into those uncomfortable places, it's with the intention of teaching us how do I manage? How do I manage being here? How do I not tighten my face? How do I not, grit my teeth, squint my eyes, clench my fingers, grip my toes? How do I be in this space that has me right up to my edge and breathe and be here and trust and know that there will be ease on the other side of this moment? That's what the point and the goal of the uncomfortable postures are when it comes to a yoga practice, at least in the way that I teach in my world. And then I always say that what we experience on the mat is a reflection of our lives off the mat, right? Like somewhere I heard, yoga is 99% of our yoga is life. Like what we do on our mat is just 1%. I can't remember who said that, but I know I heard it somewhere along the way during my teacher training journey and growing as a yoga teacher. And that always, always, always stuck with me because it's so true. The postures are just part of the process. It's life. It's how we respond to things that happen to us. That's the work. Do we tense up when something challenges us? Do we give in? Do we cry? Like what happens? And how can we use this yoga practice to teach us how to respond with ease? It doesn't mean that the situation will be that much easier. It doesn't mean that it still won't feel uncomfortable, but it allows us to stay in a place that feels grounded, to stay in a place that feels anchored, to stay in a place where we can see beyond the moment and say, okay, this is this moment, but there's something beyond. And when we're on the mat, when we're in the physical yoga practice, it's usually Shavasana or child's pose, but it's usually Shavasana, the final resting posture. When you get to that place, it's like, okay, this is why I did everything to come to this place where everything integrates and I'm present and I'm aware and I'm feeling my body and I know what's going on. So, I'm just using that practice, that example of the yoga practice, as a way to just get insight into our lives. So it's the same way. What do we do when we get into these uncomfortable spaces? We can try to fight. We can try to go against the flow. We can curse the gods. We can, do all and believe me, I have done absolutely all of it. I have said, for a woman who is really fighting to have her baby, there are moments that will bring you face to face with God or the God as you, know it. But there are moments that will bring you like, why is this happening? Why is this not happening? And then you have, for me personally, the age factor that I'm trying not to pay attention to, because outside of the space, my age is just a number. Like it's something I have to be aware of in terms of like, okay, you got to get mammograms and all this stuff at this age, but it's just a number, but in this space, it's a thing, in this space, it feels like the window is closing. In this space, it feels like, well, I have this life that I always dreamed of, right? As a kid, like I said, I always knew I wanted to have kids. And just being, the youngest one and having older brothers and kind of a larger family in that way. Like I said, I always knew I want a lot of kids. I just want a big family. I love family. You know what I mean? My family drives me crazy sometimes, but I love family, right? And I always wanted to have one. And I feel blessed. I feel like I've been blessed with the gift to love. Sometimes my baby might say like, Rachel, like, it's a whole lot of love, because he's Capricorn. And again, I'm Scorpio. So it could be a lot of like emotion and all of that. But I really believe like it is my gift from God. It is my gift from Spirit to be able to love, to have compassion. I'm not perfect. I definitely have very human moments. Again, I don't mean to keep coming back to this, but I am a Scorpio. So I have, sharp temper. I have my moments. But I always like that. That's like my love is like my anchor, right? So I've always wanted to have kids just to love, have a family to love, have a partner to love. And, I've always wanted to have a family. I've always wanted to have a partner. And, when I got divorced, that was like my first, like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Like this is not, that just wasn't part of the plan. And then, like I said, I was a single mom from that point on for a good 10 or 11 years before I ended up in the partnership I'm in now. And I have the love that I feel like I've been seeking and that I feel like fills me up, but it doesn't, the family structure is still one that I'm trying to fix and manifest. And, and that's where, it gets a little tough because it's it's not happening. Like I think my kid would be a beautiful big brother, and I want to create the most beautiful creation I could ever create with my partner. And I thought of names, and you just have all of these moments around what you want to manifest, and it's just like, but it hasn't happened. So learning to trust the moment. That's what I'm doing. My therapist would say, like, because I want to say, I realize, like, maybe I have more work to do. And you know what I mean? Like, that's where the trust comes in. And my therapist would say, but you're worthy right now. Why aren't you worthy right now? And she's right. I am worthy right now. And even if I have to tell myself that to believe it, I am worthy right now. But I am a person who does spiritual work, spiritually based work. And so just as I guide and I teach, I'm always first and foremost a student. And so I know from my work, if there's still some healing that needs to be done, if there's still some work in my partnership that, needs to be done, maybe my business is not where it needs to be just yet, you know what I mean, for me to truly be able to have a business and have, a new baby, you know what I mean? Like I have to try and trust that things are the way that they are for this moment, because that's all I really have, right? And I know sometimes it's so much easier said than done. I know it may kind of seem like, and depending on what you're going through, it might just seem like, yeah, those are just words. But I don't know. I guess if I could encourage you, if you're going through something, if you are on a similar journey, if you're on this journey, this fertility journey, to just try and trust each moment just a little bit, to try and trust this moment a little bit, because it's the trust that will keep you in the ring, as Brene Brown would say, right? It's the trust that will keep you in the fight. It's the trust that will keep you going, at least it is for me. I definitely have those moments where I'm like, this is never going to happen. You have those negative Nancy thoughts. My apologies to anybody named Nancy. But, you have those thoughts. You have those dark thoughts, the shadow thoughts, right? We talk about shadow work in my yoga classes a lot. But you have those thoughts, and the trust is what allows you to try and combat those thoughts. Because even if your reality doesn't look the way that you want it to look just yet, those thoughts, the shadow thoughts, are not going to help. They're not going to make anything better. And in fact, they'll make things worse, and then it almost becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then you kind of get stuck in that space. But when you find that little bit of trust, that little bit of trust, even a little, like they say in the Bible, the mustard seed of faith, you find that little bit of trust, that's what can help you continue putting one foot in front of the other, giving it a chance, believing you still have time, having faith. It's just what can keep you going. And again, like I said, staying in the ring. So there is some surrendering in that. I could tell you a whole nother, story podcast about, my fight with surrender. Again, as Scorpio, I am a fixed sign. So it's really hard for me to relinquish. Sometimes that's where my control freak comes in. I'm not so much control freak like by way of like how I keep my house and all that type of stuff. I'm not like type A in that way, or loving Excel charts and stuff like that. But it's just more like, wanting to control the reins of the outcome of my life. And so surrender has always been a test of the universe for me. I know it. And this process certainly requires that, surrendering to the process and trusting each moment. So that's what I wanted to share. I don't want to keep this going for too much longer, as I do want to get into our moment of taking a breath and sharing a passage. But, I just, I wasn't sure how to contextualize, this podcast episode. I just knew what I wanted to talk about. I jotted down some notes just to, kind of keep myself on track. But I just wasn't sure like how it would flow. I knew it would be just getting on the mic and talking and flowing from the heart, right? I didn't know that the music was going to pop up in the middle. So, and if there is no music, that means my boo edited it out. But yeah, we have the intro and the outro music, and the outro music like popped up. So I didn't know that was going to happen. I just wanted to get on, to get on the mic, and I wanted to share. And I knew, I wanted to talk about my fertility process, and I knew that I wanted to talk about trusting each moment. I teared up a little bit, but the good thing is I made it through without crying. And even if I did cry, that's totally okay. So let's go ahead and end it there. If you are on this journey and you just feel like you need some support, you need a community, I am here for you. You can find me at rachelvossyoga.com on the web. You can find me at Rachel Voss Yoga on Instagram, and same Rachel Voss Yoga on Facebook. Just if you need a community, someone to reach out to, if you want to try yoga to help you through the process, maybe meditation, visualization, I'm here for you, So yeah, reach out, and just, again, trust each moment and know that you're not alone. You're so not alone, on this journey. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and take a deep breath. If you're sitting in a chair, go ahead and maybe come to the edge of the chair just enough to be able to ground your feet on the floor. And if you're sitting, on the ground or anywhere else, just sitting nice and comfortably wherever you are, finding a tall spine. Resting your hands on your thighs, palms facing down, just to give you a sense of grounding for this moment. You can close the eyes if that feels good. Draw in a nice deep breath in. And exhale out. And let's find that again. Taking a deep breath in. Exhale out. And if that feels good to you, you can just keep on breathing, taking a nice deep breath in through the nose and letting out a nice exhale out through the mouth. I'm going to go ahead and share a passage. Again, this is from Melody Beattie's Journey to the Heart, Daily Meditations on the Path to Freeing Your Soul. And this passage is called Trust the Unknown. Look, see how much you've changed. See the difference in your perspective. Remember all those years you were so fearful, trying to peek ahead, trying to see what the future held. Remember how upset you got, how uncertain and abandoned you felt because you didn't know the plan. Now life has taken you to a new place for you, but a place that is ancient. All along, you were not supposed to be getting the answers about what the future held. You were supposed to be learning the magical way of trust and inner guidance, learning to feel your way through, trusting and committing to your vision, your energy, your purpose, your place, each day and moment along the way. You were supposed to be learning to allow the universe to magically unfold and trust that it would. You have been learning this lesson. You have been learning it well. See how you delight in life's magic now. The surprises, the not knowing, the absolute trust in the universe to bring you to your answers, manifest your visions, and help you when you can't quite see. See how much you cherish your relationship to the universe, a relationship so much broader and more encompassing, so much more vital than you could ever before imagine. See how joyfully you walk your path, enjoying all the sights, opening your heart to loved ones and strangers. See how benevolent it really is when you are not able to see ahead. Not knowing has taught you about life's magic. It has connected you to yourself and to the universe. It has connected you to God. Not knowing has taught you to know more than you could ever imagine. So, trusting each moment and trusting the unknown. And it always comes back just to that place, right, of trust. So, lovelies, I hope this podcast was of benefit. I hope, there was a gem, a nugget, a word that you were able to get from this. Not sure where episode 3 is going to go, but I hope that you will meet me there to find out where we'll next be going in this podcast. But again, it's definitely going to be, like I said, taking a peek inside my world, just getting a little bit more than maybe I share on the socials and stuff like that. But just, just real life stuff. So with that, I look forward to seeing you on the next episode, and we will end, as I always like to end, the way I do in yoga classes and now with this podcast. May you be happy. May you be free. May you be peaceful, easeful, useful, and joyful. The light in me honors the light in each of you. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you next week.